of the people at the top, even though those people at the top are there for their stint and then it changes again. So I'm not going to change the entirety of my moral framework simply because the people at the top of a political party did something wrong. I still am going to stand for what I stand for, and what I stand for fits within the purview of the right at this point in time.
Right. As much as people might hate to admit it, there is such a thing as a choice between lesser evils sometimes. And especially in politics, it's inevitable. You have to make that choice. You have to be like, look, what can I conserve? Unfortunately for conservatives, we're incredibly reactionary. We're not pioneering. The left is all about pioneering new things nobody's ever heard of before and twisting it 6 ways from Sunday. And we're not about that. It's like we know what the truth is. We know who Christ is. We know the Bible. We know that humans are made in God's image. Men are real. Women are real. And we can't change that. And we have a responsibility to our children to raise them correctly, as you brought up. And those are of course social issues, but those are foundational national issues anyway. You cannot have anything that you want to call a nation if you are tormenting children, if you are destroying the family as a concept, if you are deriding and demeaning the family as a concept.
Exactly. That's where part of where I started with all of this is I started talking about the effeminate actions of men in the modern era, and because of popular media and everything else, we have basically an entire generation that's been taught that men at the top are idiots and women should have power over everything, from all the television shows, all the everything, and that the feminism movement has done great damage to the nuclear family. It's done great damage to the outlook of gender roles. It's ushered in the gay rights and trans rights, and everything else is ridden in on the back of the feminist movement. And I think that there is a level of piggybacking that's happened. Like, I think that there's inherent evils that live within the ideologies of the feminist movement, but I think that it also piggybacked onto all kinds of innocent people that bought in because they thought it was for the betterment of women in general. But in reality, it did way more than that, and it did all kinds of damage in every direction.
And you look at the response from some people who were ostensibly on the right in some form or fashion. You look at Andrew Tate, and he's the immature overreaction to feminism, where it's like, you're going to do X, well, I'm going to do Y, I'm going to do B, I'm going to go the other side of the alphabet. You're going to say, I'm evil, I'm just going to say you're evil. You're going to say, I'm using you, I'm going to say, yes, I'm using you. You're going to be materialistic, I'll be materialistic. And it's like, okay, what do we actually prize here? Because it just sounds like you're admiring the feminists for their vices, and you want vices of your own that serve your jollies.
Right. What I would call people like Tate are adolescent masculine, because they're functioning as if they're a teenage boy in the realm of masculinity. They're pumped up and ready to go and but there's no mature, secure masculinity there. There's no your yays be yays and your nays be nays. There's no, this is my stance, this is the moral foundation of where I stand, and there is a right and a wrong, and I'm going to stand in what is right. And I think that there's a huge faction that grew in huge popularity with the adolescent style of masculinity, and not like the father and husband masculinity, the firm foundation, or the banding of a household, or the leadership of a community, or the leadership of a church, or like all of these things where the man has to exhibit real masculinity that doesn't sway like the wind to whatever you want, like sleeping around with everybody and acting a fool and calling people things just to call people things. And
on top of that, true. On top of that, there's ways that you can use Kevin Samuel. If anybody remembers Kevin Samuels, he was the godfather of the manosphere. He was the guy who would give these sorts of lines of advice. You can still find his footage online here or there. But one of the things that happens is when you say 6 foot, guys got to be 6 foot to get a woman, guys got to have a six pack, guys got to have 6-figure income. What you've done is you have not only affirmed the women who already think that way to think that, okay, now that my superficiality stuff is justified because the man's man has said that it's true and they has called them to that thing. But you've told a guy that if he doesn't have those things, that he should just check himself out, and that's not true either, especially in the third world. How do you isn't marriage more healthy in the third world than it is here in the first world? Mo rebuttal. Yep. How you doing,
Mr. President Rex?
Long time no see.
Yes, it's been a moment. It has.
I was waiting for your Baldur's Gate streams.
Yeah, they've been postponed until I can let things settle down. But
sure.
I'm playing with a new schedule that will free up earlier starting time, and I should be able to start streaming in the evenings more regularly. So,
Mr. Rebuttal,
should be coming too.
What is your analysis on the state of manhood in the West and how we define it and the different factions therein?
Oh, that's a pretty broad descriptor there.
The floor is yours.
Yeah. So what the current state of manhood? Well, I think that men fundamentally are hurting pretty bad from a moral standing, from a guidance standing, from having people they can look at and inspire them and also teach them to what it means to be masculine. Because if you look at in modernity, you look at the current propaganda, you look at what is pushed on them, they have many different things telling them many different things of how they should and what is masculine and what is not masculine. If you look at, and also that masculinity is toxic, that's drilled in quite a bit from different interest groups. So I think they have a lot working against them, and there was a bit lost, especially in the younger men that I talked to. A lot was lost and passed down that wasn't done from previous generations, right? I feel like there was a lot more of passing down of knowledge and what it means to be a man and what your duties are as a man. That was a big thing that was highly emphasized in past generations that isn't not so much today. And you look at parents today, and even parents in a few generations ago, you look at public school systems that are basically daycares. They've passed on the burden of guiding their children and raising them and teaching them what it means to be an adult. So when you factor, it's so many things that factor into this, and you get the product that we have today that is men who have weak moral compasses. They have weak convictions. They are hedonistic in a lot of ways, and they're drawn to influencers that they think are going to show them the way and save them. And in the end, it ends up being empty and not really anything that's going to add value to their life or any meaning to their life. And I think that's why Christianity has started to have a resurgence. I think men are starting to realize that tradition does matter. The older ways of doing things, these duties do have a place, and it gives you purpose as a man.
I think you are correct, but I also think that a huge portion of like the acting outside of their masculinity, the hedonism, all of these things are tied into a training throughout the lives of the last few generations, whether it's popular media or even their own parentage. They're being shown that these things are okay and desirable, and the world works this way, and to go ahead and act that way within the world rather than seek the traditional position of a stoic masculine male who is seeking to be the leader and holding himself and others to those standards.
Right. Yes. That's a big. I think that's a big part of it. As well. It's this, and it's an easy sell, right? Like to a large degree. So like you look at a young guy who's coming up and he looks around and he sees how kind of screwed up everything is, and then he has the Andrew Tates of the world saying like you can just be red pill and just be hedonistic and you'll get a lot of benefit from it. And the reason it's an easy sell is because he looks at the lot of men currently, like the legal system, divorce, all these things. It logically makes sense. Like, okay, well, yeah, if this is the current state, I'm just going to instead of planting a tree that I may never see the shade of and worried about that, I'm going to get whatever I can currently out of this life and enjoy myself. Because why should
the hyper individualism? And I think that the hyper individualism is a problem. We shouldn't be collectivists so as to become communist, and we shouldn't be individualists so as to become men on islands. We should be men who lead people. The Sigma male thing is a joke in terms of like, oh, I'm not trying to be alpha and lead people, and I'm not trying to be beta and be a weakling. I'll be a Sigma. I'll be some floating star out there that has no contributions whatsoever because I'm for myself. I lead by being alone. It's like, come on, give me a break. You have to not only network with other men who have like-minded values to shape society for the better, but you yourself have to pass that on, as you said, Mo, to your kids. And taking them to church and showing them God's word. Go ahead, Abe.
Well, I was going to say this is all tied into like that whole idea of self-worship, and I think it piggybacks onto everything, whether it's like libertarian stances on everything, where it's all about I stay out of your business, you stay out of mine. Well, at that point there becomes no accountability, no real accountability in any society of any kind. And it just promotes a hedonistic self-worship based society, which I think is satanic at its root. Big time.
Yeah. It's I do think that that's why what we get to participate in, to whatever degree, and the online culture of debate, I think this is very important because it is an avenue where men can interact with this and realize, okay, well, maybe these guys have a point. These arguments make sense, because I can tell you, I used to be a complete degenerate, right? Like, and when I was in that moment, when I was in that space, I had a lot of realizations of like, okay, what's the point of all this? Like, this doesn't. At the end of this, there isn't much at the end of this, right? There was times when I was in Vegas and I had opportunities to get much higher pay at a much higher position and offered to me. And I remember thinking, it's funny, I just had this conversation with my wife. We were just kind of reminiscing, discussing different things. But I remember thinking, okay, I'm single. I'm doing the hedonistic lifestyle. They're offering me this more pay. I'm going to take more pay for more responsibility to dig in more, to make more money. I'm already making more than I need, way more than I need. I guess I'm going to buy a Sea-Doo. Like what? I mean, I don't, I don't really know what exactly. And I remember feeling like there was a very big, like almost like an emptiness. Like what exactly am I doing with this? Because my thoughts kind of drifted towards, okay, at the end of the day, even acquiring knowledge, even acquiring, like, getting good at philosophy, what good is it if you don't have anyone to pass it on to? Because it dies with you. Like so I'm going to learn all these things. I'm going to learn all this useful information, maybe how to grow a business and all this other stuff. And then at the end, I take it with me, and it doesn't benefit any future generation. And that to me, I remember thinking that feels like such a waste. Like such a utter waste of effort. So it makes everything feel like, what am I doing this for? What am I actually making these achievements for?
I think that hits the nail on the head. I think part of what man as an animal, right, as a person should be seeking is to create legacy. And through your progeny, you actually help build a better world because you trained your children, your sons and daughters, to be what you and what you believe should be in the world, which reforms the world over generations.
Right. You're taking part even in a small way in reshaping the world to be better, even if it's on a local level or a small scale. Like you're participating in leaving things better than when you found them. And I think that's a really fulfilling and big thing. I remember even having the thought like, okay, well, if I'm not going to have kids, I mean, I guess I guess I can go coach a little league game or something. I don't know. I don't know, something, right? Something to pass on something to where it just doesn't feel like an utter waste.
Well, it's kind of what the entire book of Ecclesiastes is about, and I encourage everybody in the chat to read the book of Ecclesiastes. It's 12 short chapters. It's about the absolute vanity of life without any point or profit. It even says some things that Mo is hitting on, which is, I perceived that wisdom is better than folly, but also that the wise man and the foolish man end up in the same place. They both die at the end of it all.
Yeah.
Also,
it's a hard thing to contend with when especially when you don't really know, you're in that state of unknown. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to find a wife. I don't know if I'm ever going to have kids.
Well,
and what's that
once
like?
Again, once again, it being in that headspace, it makes all these other influences an easy sell to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's like it rains on the good and the wicked. Like you live in the same world. You're gonna live by the same inevitable rules that govern this physical reality while you're here. Actually, it's funny you brought up Ecclesiastes because it goes over that. But like I also was reading, I think it's 2 Timothy recently, and it's talking about the future generations, and it's like, yeah, it gives you that clarity. Like, you should live for something, and guess what? The world isn't going to like that. Like, so not only are you going to end in the same place, but the world is also going to try to make you step away from the things that you believe the whole while. Which I think partially is like, I don't know. There's like a level in my head. This is not scriptural, but there's a level in my head where it's like the only religion's God that is used as a curse word is Christianity. The only one that seeks to defame the entirety of the religion through speech and through coarseness is Christianity. Like, there's a certain level of that is a signifier to you that there's something of this world trying to diminish and destroy that. And that should be a sign to you that there's something important there. Like, nobody's running around saying Muhammad as a curse.
Correct.
They're just not. They're not saying, oh, for Buddha's sake. No, they're not. Why is that? Maybe because
we internally know our creator. We all know our creator. Romans 1:18 is correct. We suppress the truth and unrighteousness. We all know who God is implicitly, even if we've never heard or read the Bible. If we've heard the name of Jesus and you're lost, you hate the name of Jesus because Jesus came to save us from our sins. And if you are in love with your sin, if you're a child of the devil, then you're going to hate Jesus.
Yeah, I think this has also been, I mean, this is kind of an obvious statement, but this has also been going on for a very long time. Like, this has been going on for a very, very long time. Because, example, I haven't read it in a while, and I'm just kind of going through books and reading, and I was reading a little bit of Nietzsche recently. And anybody who's read Nietzsche knows kind of his viewpoints on Christianity and some of the stuff that he writes about. So I think in modernity with the internet and how fast information trades, and it feels a lot more magnified to a large degree. But the black and white of it is, this is they've been coming after Christianity for a very long time. Like it's always been this way.
Well, since its inception, right? Since the birth of Christianity and the death and resurrection of Christ, they have, since that day, sought to destroy it, which is why it proliferated the way that it did, in fact. In its origin, like that truism, like propagated Christianity faster than if they had not tried to oppress it. If they had not thumbed down on the scale, I think that it would have been like, oh, another religion, okay, whatever. But the fact that the system turned on Christianity and tried to squash it was partly why people went, wait a minute, what about this thing needs looked at? Because why are they trying to destroy it this way? These guys are over here not teaching to, destroy and take everything, and for some reason the system is trying to crush that. They're trying to crush like hope and salvation, and like they're trying to stop these people from even saying it. So, and I think that it's a carryover into our modern time. We see the same actions by the same types of groups trying to destroy it.
Yeah, they're met with truth, and so even if you take it down to like just simple terms, like, people in general, when they are they have a wrong view or a contradictory worldview, we see this all the time. You try to logic your way through it, discuss it with them, and show them the reality of it, and some of them get almost violent because they attach their self to this idea. And also people have this hedonistic way of like not wanting to be told like, oh, they're in the wrong, or maybe they shouldn't be living in a certain way, right? A lot of people react negatively to that instead of viewing it as a duty. They just get worked up and crazy. So it's kind of the fallen state of man to react that way.
Indeed. So I'm going to address something in my chat. Junior Coltrane, who I've seen trolling here and there, is asking a few questions of me, like why I'm wearing such a stupid hat, why it's very unadult to wear a top hat. I would ask you, Junior Coltrane, what is unadult about wearing a top hat exactly, in your estimation? And also, what have I said that seems childish or stupid to you, or unadult-like?
Because he doesn't like that he makes you taller than him. That's what it is.
Well, I bet I'm already taller than him without the hat. So
yeah, but it's extended with a hat. Yeah.
So, but then, I'd have to ask, like, by what metric are you judging adultness of an individual? You say I look like a clown. Well, I don't have face makeup on, and if a fashion statement is childish, then basically everyone's childish because they all choose their clothing based on the look of it, generally speaking, unless it's utility. And even then, you're still picking it based on the way it looks and its utility. So exactly what is childish about it?
Of course, I don't know, Abe. I don't think I've ever seen you with your hat off. For all I know, it's just all head. It just goes.
It's a cone.
It's just giant to keep your brain, like the big brain you have there. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe Tim Pool lives under that hat.
Let me. Junior Coltrane, Tim Pool. Abe, you want to be taken seriously, but you dress like a circus clown. Did I have to say that? So here's the thing.
Can I come out dress? I voted for Bernie.
No kidding.
There's a beauty to this comment, because maybe you'll learn something. The point of the hat isn't that it's childish or that it's overly fun, but if I can speak and look like this but make good enough points that it hits something in you or the chat, then it's the ideas that matter and not the appearance. And maybe you should learn something from that.
Dang, son.
something about a book in the cover, its cover, or something like that. You know, something that's kind of an analogy in there.
Something.
That rings a
Yeah.
bell.
Yeah, yeah.
Not literally. I just did it, so I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah.
Clothes make the man. That's funny. That's funny.
Clothes
Clothes
make the man.
only make the appearance of a man, my friend.
That's what
because
Bruce Jenner
anybody
said,
can wear
right?
Clothes.
Meanwhile, you got billionaires walking around in like jeans and like a white beater.
Right. Look at Warren Buffett, you know.
Yeah.
Abe, I'm not trying to be
Yes.
hurtful. I just want to bring it up again. Jeez. Just trying to help.
I didn't feel like it was hurtful at all.
I do like a nice suit. Everyone, it is fun to
Agreed.
dress snazzy.
Oh,
Everyone-
unapologetic preacher, one to Bidon Headwear says, I don't find the hat to be childish. It's brilliant branding, in my opinion. Correct. It is brilliant branding.
Yeah.
And plus,
he'd have to change his whole thing. Like he wouldn't. He'd have to change Abe or something. You know, you wanted to rebrand. Come on.
well, one of the first
Birthdays?
conversations I had with Abe was what's the origin of all this? And he was like, he was at one point the Dinkus, and then his likeness was so akin to Abraham Lincoln that when he and the hat combined forces, he became the Abe Dinkus, or as we call him, Mr. President.
Indeed.
Oh, so you just used to go by Dinkus? I didn't know that.
I did. I was the Dinkus. It's a whole thing. The Dinkus knows, and there's a literary usage, right? In type that you use the Dinkus to show that there is more to the story. There's a continuation of information to be sought, and the Dinkus knows is saying that what comes next is knowledge.
Okay. And Abe lore here.
Yes, there's an origin story to the guy who has flaming wings and a sword, and gosh, what else? By the way, Abe, what? A few months back, after my slavery debate, you had this stream called Gorilla Mind. What is Gorilla Mind? What is that all about? Please, I see in your face you're aching to tell us about Gorilla Mind.
So there was a stream where I was arguing with people and I started answering their questions before they were asking their questions. And then a joke got made about me snatching the thoughts out of their minds before they're spoken. And then I got like some dirty looks during that stream, and they're like, he tried to kill him with his thoughts. And I drank and it went down the wrong tube and I choked. So there was this whole joke. And then I was like, I used my gorilla mind. I snatched his thoughts from the air, and then it became a song. And the song's called Gorilla Mind, and it's a fantastic artistic rendition.
I did like the art that came with that, with the levitating electric gorilla with the glowing eyes. That was something.
Yep. It's pretty amazing.
Why can't all men have a gorilla mind? That's what we need. All the men need to download Gorilla Mind into the brain chips provided by Elon Musk, and then we will all bring back an era of manliness to this country.
That's right.
And
Go on
gorillas.
VK. You just got to go on VK to see some of that. There's a bunch of gorilla minds all over the place. Just ooga boogaaing all over the place.
That's also true.
Not false.
That's
Hey,
true. That's true.
new member, unapologetic preacher.
Ooh,
Hey.
welcome to the grand galley of greatness.
What do you, so do you have like a name for your guys? Like the, cool, like
Call them the Hatters.
The Hatters? Okay. Because Rob Nor has the
But
what is it,
usually
the,
when I raid, I tell them to go in and tell them it's a presidential raid.
presidential raid. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That works.
Or, you could get into an argument like I did yesterday with those guys on Easies about the difference between precedent and president, because they thought that the president is the precedent of, it was so weird. That was a goofy argument. And I'm like,
Wait,
linguistics is kind of important, gentlemen.
was that pronunciation or meaning or both or what?
It was them thinking that presidents set precedents legally in like all kinds of stuff that didn't make sense. And then it got really, really weird. Like the whole conversation was really weird. And then I had people getting in arguments with me about the Civil War and what happened and why it happened. And I'm like, good luck.
Right.
Don't let Shiva see that conversation. He'll like go into a fit.
About presidents and precedents.
Yeah.
No, wait. No.
Wait. Yeah.
Hold on.
So no, it was funny. There was like a whole bunch of I even called it out. It was the same. It led to the same topic as tonight because I was trying to explain that you have to stick with your moral foundations. If you are a Christian, or even like I know that like there's going to be contention of what a Christian is, but across the board, for the most part, Christians, even the non-denominationals or the even other sects that all three of us wouldn't consider to be Christian, believe that ending the life of a baby in the womb is murder. And so if that's the case, you cannot in good conscience vote for the party that is pushing for more of that. And so it led to that.
I heard a little bit of the discussion before I came up. You guys were talking about a little bit about that. That's kind of the reason why I popped in. I was curious kind of how you guys got to that. But actually, there's another panel that reached out to me. They want me to come and discuss because they're very anti-Trump, and they want me to discuss, is MAGA a success or a failure? Which there's a lot to unpack there. Like, where's your criteria of success, and where's your criteria of failure?
Now, are they anti-Trump because they're Lincoln Project conservative types, or conservative, or are they libs?
I don't think they're libs. I think they just hate anything to do with like, going into Iran and Iran war and
So
how much influence
isolationists.
Israel,
Paleo-conservative types.
how much influence Israel has on the U.S., that sort of thing. So my take is I'm a, I guess, how do I put this? I'm a per issue critic or voter, right? If you want to put it that way. I don't think any one politician you vote in is going to save you, right? And they're not going to have, they're not going to usher in a utopia. That's just the reality of our government, right? So if you look at someone like Trump, I like how a lot of people apparently have come to the great insight and realization that, he might be a little bit of a Zionist, he might have some Zionist pulls. Like, well, no shit. Like, if you look at back in his history, that shouldn't be a surprise. Now, at the same time, he's anti-baby deletion, right? Anti-transformer, right? All these other topics that you could point to, immigration, that sort of thing. You can point to these
the Right to
different
Try
issues
Act
and say, okay, well, am I going to vote for this party, even though he might have some issues that I fundamentally disagree with? Is that going to sway me to stay home to allow someone who is for all those horrible things come into power? Because they will push that agenda.
Right.
Like, it doesn't make a logical sense to me that, and I don't even really view it as a lesser of two evils. I view it as, you look at the different categories of what you're interested in, the different policies, and you say, okay, you weigh it. It's like, what is the criteria? What is the criteria of like what I care about most versus less, and which candidate matches that the best? And
Right.
for me, historically, it's always been someone on the right. So why would I try to let or even, help by staying home and not voting someone else come into power that is for all those horrible things that I don't want?
Well, that's what I said earlier too. Like it's not about right and left. It's about the moral framework. It's about the foundations of what I believe. Like
Right.
the side that does the things that are evil in my belief is the side I'm not voting for. Period. Like,
yeah. And as far as Iran war goes, like, do I agree with it? No. Now that we're in there, do I want the U.S. to win? Yes. Right. Those are two different positions.
right.
Like so.
Well, it's that same
I
thing with
try to
Andrew,
look at it-
right? They're like, Andrew, you're pro-war. He's like, no, I'm not. They're like, well, you're supporting the party that has led us to this. It's like, that doesn't mean I'm pro-war. It means that this has happened and I'm not switching sides because they did war. I don't like that we're
Right.
there and I don't want us there and I don't think we should be making wars, but that doesn't mean I'm going to switch my party affiliation because this one war thing has happened. This one action has happened. The other side still supports all the things I detest that stand against the God that I serve. So
so one party is for a pipeline of grooming children and basically confusing their genders and all this other crazy stuff, right? And you look at that and then you say, okay, there's a war over here where they're bombing some people who, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't agree with to begin with, right? I don't like their religion. I don't like their policies. I don't like their worldview. So it's kind of like, even on that, it's like, I mean, okay, so I don't want us going to war, but at the same time, I definitely don't want this other thing coming to power and corrupting our youth.
And let's not forget open borders. Who is the party of open borders? Who is the party of abolish ICE? Who is the party of abolish the police? Who is the party of setting free criminals? Who is the party of putting perversion in schools as standardized things? Who is the party of locking down things continuously after the fact we didn't need them? Who is the party of putting in all these OSHA level health mandates that the Daily Wire had to go to the Supreme Court for in order to block?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't like those guys.
They're the anti-accountability, anti-reality, anti-Christ party.
Right. And I don't like them. So why? So again,
Who hates them? Who hates them?
We tend to think like I get it. We all want. I just did not to shill, but I just did a stream talking about abolitionists versus pro-lifers, and there are people who are abolitionists who have their hearts in the right place. But when you say, well, it's got to be everything or nothing in this bill that I pass, or you're sinning, and if you do anything that is in any way incremental or not 100% of what you want, then we're just not going to participate. You're not living in reality. God, even in the Old Testament, the civil laws were not reflected of everything that was 100% moral. That's why you see a raising of the standard in the New Testament, and there's no civil law given in the New Testament anyway. But the point is, I like the comment that it's not lesser of two evils. It's just kind of accepting reality in a fallen world. And to say that, oh, well, I'm not going to accept anything except an unfallen world. It's like, okay, well, you'll be in the waiting room for a long time, sir.
Yeah. It's
Well,
a very
that's the thing.
immature way of viewing the world. It's a very immature way of viewing.
We are striving to make steps forward, not backwards. And if we can take a step forward, that is a win, a small win, but it's a win. If we can cut back the amount of evil being done, we will do it. And there's no guarantee you can cut out every bit of evil at once, because you're fighting against an entire system with a huge population of people that have disparate views on all kinds of things. Any win you can get, you should be seeking. You should be pulling down the systems that destroy babies in the womb. You should be striking down whatever you can at whatever degree is possible.
Part of me thinks these accelerationists are just bored. They got high in the cocaine of streaming, and their convictions aren't keeping them grounded, as you might say when somebody's grounded, Mr. President. But they because they have no root, and their only root is how much adrenaline can I get for saying things that seem outrageous at the time? What was outrageous a while ago is that men are men and women are women, and now what's outrageous is I'm a Republican, vote Democrat, a la
Yep.
Fuentes,
Yep.
or
It's
I'm
dopamine
Candace,
addiction.
right, or I'm Candace Owens, and so and so off their husband, and I'm going to show you how. We're really close, you guys, and it's like, come on, even if all your conspiracy theories were true, how does that help me? How does that bring the culture forward? How does that get us to where we need to be? This is all just sensational, Wendy Williams, Alex Jonesy kind of stuff that we don't need.
I would not downgrade Alex Jones. A lot of what he said came true, sir. Come on.
He happens to be on the right, but it's not so much the quantity of what you say, but it's the quality of what you say. And obviously the Sandy Hook thing, even though we can argue that $1 billion is quite the bill to foot, it wasn't his best moment.
It wasn't his best moment, but it also
he took it back, right? He corrected the record, so
it was a pretty bad misstep. We'll say that.
But you
much.
also have to understand that the claim being made is the opinion of a man, and anyone who acts on that opinion is also responsible for their own actions. And for the system to destroy him in the manner that it did was to set an example to anyone on the right that questions narratives. So there's a whole bunch packed into that.
I agree.
He made a stupid claim, but guess what? They didn't take the correct actions.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I don't know enough about the case of what the justifications for exactly how many families lost their kids in order to quantify that. $1 billion seems extremely excessive.
He
obviously,
didn't make them lose their children.
Right. It's just in the meantime, he was spreading things saying that there were child actors in the family. I don't know if he said, I don't know anything beyond the child actors part, so I'm not going to say anything more to that. But what I do know is the families did experience harassment. Is that Alex Jones's fault? Was he puppeteering them? No, he wasn't. He wasn't doing that. But go ahead.
The basic claim, the issue is that part of the basic claim was that there was crisis actors on scene during and after the event, which were caught on film. And then he has all these different reels where the same person is at all these mass events. And it's like, this person did an interview at this event and this event. Somehow they were at both. And this doesn't make any sense. So we should question the entirety of the event, which I think there's some credibility in making that kind of a claim. Now, anything he said beyond that, like nobody actually died or something like that, that would be way beyond what you should have said. And I agree that that's a foolish claim to make. However, if it's the man's belief, he should have the ability to claim a belief. If he's seeing all these things, linking things, I don't think that you should be able to come back on him and say, well, because these people who watch your show acted like crazy assholes and went to these families and said stuff they shouldn't have without evidence or proof, we're going to charge you so much money that you could never pay it. And we're going to take everything you own and destroy your life because you had an opinion in the public.
I can grant all that and still say that he was like, when you make a certain kind of claim, especially when it comes to kids and the end of their life, you better take a step back before determining, do I have enough evidence to tightly make this claim? So I can grant everything you just said, and that's where I'm at. The same is true with the towers. But go ahead.
Sure. But in what capacity was he making a claim? Did he make it in a courtroom?
Like child actors?
Did he make it as a public official? Did he make it as a judge? Did he make it as a governor or a president? What capacity did he make those claims in?
A public influencer, public figure, commentator, announcer, somebody who claims to have enough documentation to back up what he's saying.
Sure. So I guess my basic claim is, like, even if it is the case that everything he said was wrong, he made declarative statements of his opinion on this thing in the public eye Here's the issue. Here's my big issue. Okay. I'm going to take this back for a second. Here's my big issue. You, me, and Mo are sitting here talking about our belief in God, the Christian God, as true, and that the best thing is for us to move forward and to stop all the unaliving of babies. And say 1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now, a political party sweeps in and decides God is false and all the unaliving of babies was not unaliving of babies because there is no babies in pregnancy. And they decide everything we have claimed here is false and no one was harmed ever in these operations done on these women, and that we are public enemies because of it. And now they can charge us billions of dollars for making these false claims on the internet, and they could take our entire lives and destroy us for it. That would be completely within the framework of what we've seen done to him right now.
Yeah, and I don't say that he should be necessarily charged in that sense. I'm just saying that his claims are irresponsible.
Sure.
And obviously detrimental. Let's say nobody harassed these family members. Even hearing that broadcast, and something like that is so sensational, it's going to be broadcast over and over again, absent of any justification of charges and going to court. That's still a horrible thing to hear about your kids, especially if it's false.
Sure.
That's I'll say that much. I'll say that much. I also think it's just a crazy claim. But that's not me telling anybody what should happen in court. That's not me telling anybody should be punished. That's just me saying that he's not helping when he makes irresponsible claims like that. And even if he made 10,000 proven claims, just like how Ecclesiastes says it's the one dead fly that spoils the ointment, there are some things that even though they're numerically one or two things, they're so bad that it does kind of ruin the thing. I mean, for example, Alex Jones himself talks about David Icke. David Icke agrees with Alex Jones about a lot of things. David Icke is also a reptilian propagator, and he called it a turd in the punch bowl. That one aspect of his belief system.
Sure, and I get that. It's just the whole thing of the ruining and taking everything from a man for opinions made on the internet becomes wild to me, regardless of whether or not it was a good take or a bad take, regardless of whether or not he hurt the family's feelings of their children. He had nothing to do with the event. The event is not within his purview to take any action on. It was an after the event opinion or stream made by the guy. It seems wild to me that a person could say things, even if they're retarded, even if they're terrible things to say, even if they hurt feelings. He said these things on the internet, and what the outcome of that was a court bringing him in, finding him liable for the actions of people going and harassing the family over what he said, and then he is going to now pay billions in recompense to who? The families of the children who were taken from them, and lose all that he has earned in his life for saying that statement.
Yeah, I can agree. I can even agree to all that. And just in terms of the grand narrative of who's on the right and who's helping and who's not, and who's an accelerationist and who is giving opportunity to the left to dunk, he's among those people.
But they would just as likely dunk on you and I for being believers in Christ who stand against the abortion stance of the left, because we look like loonies, because to all of them, those aren't babies that are being taken. So literally, if a leftist was in office tomorrow, they could turn around and make the same claims of us and drag us into a courtroom and take everything we own for making the statements we have because of our belief, because we're loonies.
All right, but
that's my point.
I think we had a similar conversation not too long ago, and I brought up the point that the Bible teaches don't have any appearance of evil. Now, that statement wouldn't make any sense, or giving an occasion to blasphemy. That statement wouldn't make any sense unless there are things that are actually worse. We could be blameless, as much as we can. And the things that they're going to persecute us for are always going to be there, but they're not blameworthy. What we shouldn't do is be blameworthy. That's what I'm getting at. And you give more opportunities to blaspheme, especially if it's accurate. Same thing is true. It's like nobody, I think in one of Peter's epistles, it talks about how nobody should complain for being punished if they did something wrong. But you will have a reward for your persecution if you were righteous during that point.
But
don't
if
say
he
you're
believed
persecuted
what he
otherwise.
was right, but if he was wholeheartedly believing in the things he was making a claim about, and he's saying that he thinks that this is an agenda-based thing being pushed for a reason, and he legitimately believes this thing, and then he puts it on the internet, then where was the wronghood committed?
Well, it can be both. It can be both that you can be in the wrong and that you are unfairly treated after being in the wrong. You get an unjust treatment. So,
Right.
for example, that's what false flags are. False flags are
right.
You don't need
But
false flags if you can just do it to anybody for anybody you disagree with once you're in power.
Right. But that's the issue. The big issue here is a genuine belief in a thing, not actions that make you untoward, that make you seem that way, right? Because if your claim is that he was doing something purposefully and it made him in the scope of reproach rather than not in the scope of reproach ahead of time, then it becomes a moot point, because anything you believe is chargeable in the same way. Because if he genuinely believed the thing that he put forth, then he isn't acting outside of the accordance.
What's the accordance?
Well, like you're saying, if we're acting above reproach and then we're blamed for something, then it leaves less room for blaspheme. But if he believed what he was doing, then he wasn't acting outside of a reproachable thing. He wasn't acting in a way that should have been reproached, right?
Well, here's where I disagree is you should have a basis for how you believe in an orderly way. And I think his mistake was more fundamental and came before even the statements he made, which is the mode of thinking he adopted that would allow him to let that past his filter in the first place. That I'm going to broadcast this, I'm going to say this, I'm not going to do the requisite checks, I'm not going to have any self-control about this, or at least not as much self-control as I would have if I were a more, shall we say, for lack of a better term, normal individual. I can agree with what you're saying about severity. I can just grant all of what you're saying about the severity of the reaction and that people are after him and people are after us and all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying that in terms of what he said, I think it was crazy, even if he sincerely believed it. I think that did more harm than good, even if he sincerely believed it. And I think it gives more opportunity than they would have had if he never said that.
Yeah, I think hearing you both discuss this, kind of to Abe's point, the way I see it, and I think this is what Abe's touching on, is even if you grant that, okay, everything he did was wrong, let's just assume he was wrong and that the evidence he had of crisis actors wasn't real, etc., right? Even in that scenario, in our worldview, if we make exceptions for someone like that getting ostracized to that degree, then it opens the door up for, basically all kind of things.
But that goes back to the thing I never said,
well,
which was, I don't think at any point I said he definitely objectively deserves to shell out $1 billion to people. I don't think at any point in this discussion I made any comments on the justification of the punishment. Can you?
Right. Because I can't make any justification for the, and also if they're gonna go after him for this, there's a laundry list of politicians on the left during like Black Lives Matter and all these other things that were coming out and saying very inflammatory things about how they should be allowed to protest and this and that, and basically adding fuel to the fire. So should those politicians be charged with all the cities that were burned down and all this other stuff? I mean, if that's the case, then they should have free, by rights, we should be able to go after them.
Once again, that goes back to what I never said, which I'm not talking about the charges.
Right. Yeah. But my issue with the original claim is you brought him as an example. And my point would be, it doesn't matter what the thing is, you will and can be dragged before the world stage as an example of some great evil. And you brought up that we shouldn't act outside of what is good, so that there's not extra reason for people to speak out against God, right?
Well, again, what I'm yes, and what I would say to that is, in order to have good guardrails on our perspective of what's good, we have to number one, not surround ourselves with automatically conspiratorial people, because as you know, David Icke being, it's no surprise if you hang out with people who are reptilian-esque, or you have people who are off their rocker to begin with. If that's your circle, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so it would benefit us to spend more time with more even-keeled people, have more even-keeled thoughts, and being grounded in scripture. And I don't think you can be grounded in scripture and be ready to accuse of very wild things, because usually people you wouldn't.
That would be.
Okay, so wait, Rex, I have a question for you.
I think that's a bridge too far, because you can't know the mind of another man.
I have a question for you, Rex. Given what you just said there, then under that same paradigm, then should you support Trump?
What do you mean?
Well, we just got done discussing that politicians have aspects of their policies that we might not agree with, but some that we really do agree with. So if you're making the same comparison, you might have someone like Alex Jones who has a lot that we would agree with, but he had this one blemish that is bad. And I'm not saying like even support him, but also maybe not accepting them going after him, So that's because I do see the comparison.
So there's 2 things. Number one, Alex Jones is not our candidate, or is not president. He is not consequential to the direction of this country, whereas our binary choice between the Republicans and Democrats is.
Well, wait a minute.
Hold on. Let me get to my second point before I forget. Let me get to my second point before I forget.
This is important, though. Okay, before I forget. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, because I'm okay. I think I forgot it.
Sorry. What I was going to interject there is that if you're going to put the emphasis on him being a public figure that draws attention and makes this thing bad, then it's the same emphasis. It works both ways, basically. Like if he has the emphasis to say that, okay, the pull that when he says something, bad things potentially can happen and he should be careful. Well, then the inverse of that is true as well.
I think everybody should be careful when they say things, yes. But that does not affect the fact that...
But a politician that says things also has pull. It's the same...
Right.
Just because one has more legal power than the other doesn't...
I agree. Take
away from influence.
But again, part of this discussion is our agreement that it's not because of Trump's failures or excesses that we vote for Democrats. That's part of our agreement in this stream. What I'm getting at is if Alex Jones, if they're just going to bring you in from the tribunal anyway, so in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. They would have done that a long time ago for anything he would have said. But they picked the easiest thing. Why? Because it's the actual thing you say that matters. It's not just the fact that you're their enemy. It is the actual thing you say. And Abe, I know you're shaking your head, but even Nick Sandman could get his day in court and get justice, even though he was besmirched.
But it's kind of, I don't see how it's really that different than, a politician who is on your side to a large degree on a lot of different subjects. But then there's this one thing that has a blemish on his record. And so then you're going to pull support from him because the others.
I had plenty of reasons to pull support, from other angles in not only the first, but the second and the third time I voted for him. If you put him against a Democrat, I'd vote for him again today, even though he has many blemishes in my mind.
No. I was focusing.
There's no
more
binary
on the
between.
Jones.
So there is no binary. Look, if I had to choose between the Alex Jones who did have a conspiracy theory about Sandy Hook and the Alex Jones who didn't have a conspiracy theory about Sandy Hook, I would vote for the one who didn't. So if we're talking about a binary, is that the binary you're presenting?
No, I'm saying support. Just support. Like if
I never supported Alex Jones to begin with.
Supporting people who are on, let's say, the right, who obviously Alex Jones isn't for Transformers. He isn't for baby.
Is Tucker Carlson on the right?
Tucker Carlson. I don't know. Currently, I need to. His current views. I'm not sure what he is right now.
Exactly. So in terms of what is right or left anymore, is Candace Owens on? Even if Candace Owens is on the right, she is so nutty. She is nuttier than a payday bar. Why would I want anybody to take her as an example of what I believe or anything like that?
Well, this goes back to per subject critique.
So for example, like Ben Shapiro was on the right. You're not a fan of Ben Shapiro, I assume, right?
No.
But Ben Shapiro and you voted the same in 2024, right?
Yeah.
And he helped campaign for Trump in 2024, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
he was also a never Trumper at the start, so.
Right. But you would still want to differentiate yourself from him in these things and distance yourself from statements that he's made, right? Because I think they're bad for the movement.
So there's certain things I would distance myself from him on certain worldviews, yes.
Sure, and that's what I'm doing here. I think there are certain statements and stances that I will publicly distance myself from so as not to be confused. That doesn't mean I don't appreciate more votes that go in my direction. I just want to make my stance on certain important issues clear.
Yeah,
and that includes factual claims.
In the case with Ben Shapiro, though, I could probably make the case that a lot of his worldviews are fundamentally anti-American. So I can't make that case with Alex Jones.
Be that as it, well, yeah, probably not. But be that as it may, he would, if we're going to say, well, who's right and who's left, back to that like 15, 20 seconds ago in the conversation, broadly speaking, Ben Shapiro would be right wing in his worldviews on, say, abortion and taxes and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I would also put in being a patriot and wanting the best for America in there too as being a very high priority. Which, fundamentally, I don't think Ben Shapiro does. So,
okay. Well, I would say that adjacent to that would be choosing Trump as president over Kamala. I think even if you say his goals are different, the methods coincide with our methods.
Right. So, but that's kind of what my point was. Like, if you have someone who is, I guess, there's 10 viewpoints this person has, and the 10th one is kind of a shit take. I think when the system goes after that person, it would behoove us to say, well, no, hold on a second, that doesn't, you don't get to do that. That's not. First off, it's not, I think it goes against First Amendment, but
that's partially the issue I'm having with the whole Alex Jones portion of this. Right. Is like, yes, I agree that you were making the statement. I guess my underlying point of standing against it some was that they went after him in the fashion they did, partially because of his association with Trump, and it was backed and funded because of his stances that were taken, not just the Sandy Hook statements that were made. And so my claim would be that even if you believe something and you didn't do something in order for it to be wrong, and you firmly believed in the thing you were saying because you thought you were calling out some form of evil, you could still be used as a pawn against the thing that you are with, whether it's the church, whether it's the presidency, and the enemy of you will use that thing to destroy you and your side, even if you did it with the purest of intentions and for the right reasons and weren't lying. They would still use it against you. And yes, I know the claim you're making about the stances that we should be careful of as Christians because of the appearance. What I'm saying is, from the is of the world, it won't matter.
Here's the thing. I don't think that's entirely true in this sense. Giving them an excuse of doing like dumb stuff is still going to make it easier for them to do it. Whereas if you
relative.
So for example, like when Daniel was put in charge of much of the Babylonian Empire, at first his adversaries couldn't find anything to criticize. Now, they had to make it illegal to pray for him to get in trouble, right? But beforehand, they couldn't do that. Why? Because they had to restructure it. Now, I'm seeing that from your point, but on the other side, they were his enemies before they made it illegal to pray. But his blamelessness was what kept him alive up to that point. Now, our Christian principles prevent us from neglecting those sorts of things and being devoted to God in that way. So once that line is pushed up to that point, yes, we will all fall short of that. But we're not anywhere near that. That's why right now, in this day and age, we have to do something that's stupid.
Will it stop the left from using whatever they can, and anyone who stands against Christ from using whatever they can to destroy you in the public eye, and make you and everything you stand for look wrong and stupid here in America today?
They will do that, but my actions will limit the scope of what's going to stick.
Maybe.
I could see that. I could see that argument from a pragmatic point of view, but at the same time, at the same time, I feel like this is kind of I think this is too close to blaming the person for giving their attacker the excuse for attacking them. Right.
Let's say I went to a pizza shop with a Trump hat and I had a shotgun in hand. And before then, I wasn't in trouble, even though I went on YouTube and said anti-fetus deleta stuff, anti-transformer stuff, and all this kind of stuff. And then I went there and I got charged for something stupid that I did because I was like, let the children out of the basement. And then I could say, well, they were going to come after me anyway. It's like, well, no, yes, and no at the same time. Yes, they were going to use anything. I mean, my platform is nothing, but yes, they're going to use anything to stop conservatism. But if you do something that stupid, you might as well be punished anyway. And again, I'm not saying anything about Alex Jones and whether he deserves it. That's a separate issue. I'm just saying in general, doing stupid things gives opportunities that otherwise wouldn't happen if you were living in an upright manner.
But what you're talking about is an actual crime versus
I'm using an extreme example to illustrate a point that I could claim.
There's still a huge issue with this because this is perceptive. If you believe that the pizzeria has children shackled in the basement and you show up there with that firearm in order to free children, have you done something wrong?
Yes, because I've abandoned basic sense of understanding and evidence before I make a really significant decision, like going somewhere with a firearm and making false accusations that are completely nutty.
What if you had evidence?
If I had evidence, I'm also not law enforcement. If I have evidence, I'm obligated to bring that to law enforcement, which would be in the right capacity to do something about that.
Let's go one step further. What if you had all the evidence and you already went to law enforcement and they ignored you? And you've got more and more evidence over the last week that those children are there, and now people are reporting they're hearing screams from the basement.
Yes, in that case,
law enforcement still won't do anything.
In that case, I would go to the press at best because I myself cannot be a vigilante. You know this. I do not have the power of the sword. Romans 13. It's not civilians who have the power of the sword. Just because I have the means doesn't mean I have the office to do so.
So wait.
Did you not see the debate between me and Rowdy Gowdy on this on VK?
If you see a man beating and starting to force himself on a woman in public, you don't have the ability to stop that?
Oh, no, that's different than if I go inside somebody's private property, which would be, say, their establishment, make an...
What if it was in somebody's front yard?
Somebody's front yard, I would say that that's more public than if I was to barge into somebody, hold them hostage. Because the holding hostage... At that point, I think I would draw a line differently if I'm holding them hostage with a shotgun as opposed to somebody who's in public, where I'm catching somebody in the act. But it also depends on what evidence, because you say generally for this hypothetical, I have evidence. Well, what's the nature of the evidence? Because that could be impactful. Because if the evidence is I saw a child running out and a man chasing after him and the child was bloodied and had dragging chains on their ankles, in that case, yes, I would fend off the man. But that's different than if I'm going to go into a space that is a private space and I accuse them of having some basement because of things I read on 8chan, and when I bring my shotgun.
So wait, let's say you're jogging down the street, right? And there's a house, and it's private, and you see a guy forcing a family into the basement with a shotgun, and he's like, not there. He doesn't belong there. He's clearly not part of the family. Is that, you can't do anything about that?
I would call authorities in that case. Because number one, I don't know who else is. I don't claim to know, especially in your hypothetical, who else is there, how many guns they have, what the actual layout of the situation. Even if I can tell it's dangerous and they're being held hostage, that doesn't give me the right to declare myself deputy and jump right in there.
I see. I don't.
I feel like there's some gray area there.
For me, I feel like there's a certain level of moral duty in certain situations that I would step in because I know that loss of life will follow if action is not taken. And the authorities could prevent the stopping of thing because they will not get there in time to stop thing.
Yeah, because you could look at another scenario, right? Under your reason for not going in there, you're not law enforcement. You don't have I guess you don't have all the understanding of the situation necessarily, right? But I mean, if different scenario, let's say a house is on fire, right? You're not a firefighter. You're not going to potentially run there to save a life.
Yeah, in that case, I don't see that as like invasion because the property in question itself is being.
Well, no, this is
apart.
on the claim that you're not law enforcement. You're not a firefighter. Why would
I don't think a firefighter is arresting a fire and putting it in the back of an SUV and taking it home. That's not law enforcement.
No, but it's testing the claim of like you're not this category of thing you're not the proper person to do this thing. So that's what this is for that I'm addressing.
Yeah, so in that case, I don't see that. I don't have to deputize myself to put out a fire. So I don't see that as the same thing because you mentioned law enforcement.
You're running there to save life is the point.
Yeah, categorically, I see police work and firefighting as two different things.
Sure,
I might not have that. I don't even claim to have that all fleshed out, so that's interesting. But I don't see them as two different things. So I do see those as two different things, especially when it comes to like combat. We call them firefighters, but it's not actual combat that's happening. Between
of course.
sentient beings.
I'm just curious of your claim that you're not the specialized person for the right thing, right? So what is that criteria? Where's that threshold?
Yeah, so the threshold would be actual law enforcement, like Romans 13 talking about who bears the sword. The government bears the sword. In the case of the firefighting, there's no such biblical principle that says you cannot be the firefighter because the government bears the hose. There's nothing like that. And so in the case where there's a child coughing and fire, then I would.
But if someone was being assaulted, you would step in there if they were just in public.
In public, yeah.
So is it the public thing that changes it, or what is exactly that makes it? What is the threshold breaker there? Like what exactly constitutes where you can and can't step in?
Yeah, so I'll admit that there's some gray in there, and part of it has to do with these hypotheticals are like perfect hypotheticals, and I'm drawing from general principles here. So sure. So in general, if somebody's in public and these men are surrounding them, even if I'm just one guy, I would say I'm morally obligated to jump in, even if there's multiple guys on one woman. So there's that. But when it comes to like
morally obligated, okay,
yeah, because I mean, otherwise I'm a coward, right? And that's yeah, you just have to go down swinging so that the woman has a chance to make yourself that target. Even if you're unrelated,
locked in a basement, you don't have a moral obligation.
I would call that, yeah, I think that's a different situation where they are separate from me. They're within the confines of a private property, which I don't have the authority to break into and bring a firearm or any implemented weapon in there to do that. And I think there's a reason that there are vigilante laws. I think there's a reason I would be charged with crimes as well as the people who have the children in cages.
So, different scenario. Like this is obviously the extreme scenario, but we're testing logical reason here. Post-apocalyptic world, there is no government. You come across a camp, and it belongs to some raiders. They have some children. You're armed. What is your moral obligation then?
Well, in the case of the raiders outnumbering me in a given spot of land, they would be the government de facto. So, for example, when testing what is a marriage, for example, let's say it's you and one woman on a desert island, and the desert island is owned by nobody. You guys are the de facto government of that land, and therefore, being the de facto government of that land, you can actually marry each other autonomously in that land. Now, you might disagree with that, but that's my position, that the government does have an oversight of marriage and things like that. That the marriage can be administered by the state.
But two questions.
In the case of the hypothetical that you gave me,
right,
the raiders would be the government insofar as they are the people with the most guns and most power in that set of land.
So, okay, let's just say same scenario, it's just one raider.
Oh, then it's a war. It's a de facto war. Even though it's between two people, you have equal strength in that, then it's open season.
But would you be morally obligated to do something?
Yeah, if we're in this hypothetical, yes.
So then one raider, you're morally obligated, but if it's two raiders, they're a de facto government, you're not morally obligated.
In that case, in that case with the model, because you'd be defying the de facto government of that land, even though it would be injustice to do so. Yeah, I would have to say that, even though that sounds wild, that is because we're using an extreme example, right? But they would be,
right.
especially if you're a proponent of force doctrine. I don't see a way around that.
But you're not a proponent for force doctrine.
But you are.
I am, but this is a scenario posing to you, not me.
Right, but my model is government, not force.
Well, government is force.
Government is more than force, because otherwise you couldn't say that God gives them the sword, because you can have force without right.
But you just got done saying that the two people and the multiple raiders would have the force and the government. So
that doesn't divorce it from being force, though.
Okay, I don't know who I'm talking to. Who am I engaging now?
Sorry,
No, I'm saying you're using one kind of argument, Mo's using a different kind of argument.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not trying to dogpile here, but
I jumped in. It was my own fault.
Okay, yeah, Mo, restate your argument.
I'll let Abe go after this. I just real quick. But just a moment ago, you said you're not a force proponent, but doctrine proponent. But
correct.
I was just appealing to
your worldview.
Yeah, that's fine. But you just got done saying that in the case with the Raiders, they had the more force, so that made them the de facto government. So how do you square that?
Because the force is an indication of who is in charge, but is an indication not just on the situational level, but also on who. Everything is providence. So God, even though they are evil in this case, God still gave them that governance and that providence, because it's not just force alone; it's also providence, which goes back to Romans 13.
So God would give the Raiders providence of a government?
Same thing he did with the Roman Empire. Same thing he did with all the evil empires, Babylonian when they took over Israel. Like, God does give rise to evil and good empires. Yeah.
So wait, this is interesting. So then, under your worldview, is it possible for Christians to have a righteous war to like overthrow an evil government?
My initial gut reaction is yes, but I don't claim to know the rules in which to do that. I think I'm kind of at my end of my rope, but my gut says yes, but I can't tell you why right now.
Okay. Anyway, so that was interesting. Okay, yeah, Abe, you had a point. I didn't mean to.
They're fine. You were still on your line. I jumped in. It wasn't your fault. That was mine. I tried to jump into the middle of your argument because that didn't make sense to me. So you said that you're for government, but you're not for force doctrine. And I said government is force. And you said government is more than force, but it's not just force, and other people can have force. But that doesn't mean that government isn't force. Just because two things can have force doesn't mean that the one isn't force.
Do you agree that government is not force alone?
Of course. Of course it's not force alone, but the baseline of how government acts and can act is based in the force with which it holds. Otherwise, no law could ever be enforced.
I agree, but there's more than the physical and circumstantial dimension of government. There's also the moral stance that's given to government. That's the difference. That's why when people say they use force doctrine, they say, well, where are your rights without force? It's like they were always there. Otherwise, you can't have an oppressive government.
Sure, but absent force, the government has no ability to do anything.
Because
absent force, the government cannot act.
Right. You're talking about the actions, which is always just that's the circumstantial plane entirely of whether or not. Let's say everybody in the government was like blinded and crippled tomorrow. Yes, they have no ability to do anything, and it's a power vacuum. And whoever else comes in is now the government, right? I would chalk that up to. So let's say China came in, right? Let's say we're in a weakened state. China comes in. China owns us. We're now part of China. That's it. And that was in God's providence. And while it involved force, and while force is necessary, it's also not the only thing that's at play. They have
Obviously,
government legitimacy.
It's never
I'm saying
just one thing.
Right. Okay. Then maybe we agree.
It's never just one thing. But if let's take this from like the building blocks of nothingness, right? There's humans on Earth.
Yeah.
Right. At that point, the force of whoever can assert power and force will then develop the control of the others on the planet Earth.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That force is implemented and then grows into something else. So the society develops over time, and yes, there's culture implemented and everything changes over time. When a government finally is put into place over the group of people, the only way for that government to have any power or any say within the region is force. Yes or no?
Yes, I agree that that is how they have say, and that's how they have sway. Nobody disagrees with that. All I'm saying is yes, and because the and is the moral plane of the right of the government to rule and administer the sword in a way that the civilians and the citizenry cannot. And that's why I'm drawing the lines between why can't I just declare myself deputy in the morning when I feel skippy with my black coffee?
No, that's only true if it is the case that the people have told the government that the government holds the sword. Because if the government says that all people hold the sword and you have to do it yourself, then that government is a completely different thing at that point.
What's the difference between that and anarchy at that point?
Well, the government still would sanction.
Okay,
like
then their guns would still trump our guns, right? Because the government would have tiers of authority, which would be backed up by greater force.
Sure, but then you couldn't make the claim that only the government holds the sword.
No, here's why. When I'm saying the sword, and when the Romans 13 is talking about the sword, it's talking about the authority to execute justice. That means that you would have to still wait for a trial to happen, as it would be like Numbers 35, for example. You would still have to get witnesses together if you wanted to have an actual justice system. It's not going to be Judge Dredd, where everybody gets to decide to shoot each other. There's order to this, and with order, obviously, comes greater tiers of force. So you can't say, well, we're going to make it equal. No, because I think you're misusing the phrase of holding the sword, because holding the sword is not just do I have a weapon or do I have force. Holding the sword is the just administration of capital punishment. And you can't just have everybody have the authority unanimously, even if you just signed a waiver to say, oh, that everybody has the just, because then it's effectively anarchy, because anybody can kill anybody and have carte blanche to do it. That's just anarchy at that point.
My point is that what the claim that you're making is from a Christian paradigm, right? And there are places that it's not going to function the way that we see it. Right. So say you have tribal lands and there is no government and everybody can do as they please in this place where there is no government. Who has the sword?
Nope. That'd be anarchy. There would be none. There'd be no structure. It'd be like Israel when there were no kings in the book of Judges. It'd be just everybody does what's right in their own eyes. That's anarchy. Yeah. If it's every man for themselves, then there's no standing government. It's chaos.
So then my claim of the government is at its baseline force is a true statement. The other stuff is culture and morality and things stacked on top of the body that you've given the force to.
No, because the government has to have legitimacy in order to be government, and the legitimacy is given by God. That is before the actual physical circumstances of the thing. To say it's basically force is to deny Romans 13, because otherwise the legitimacy aspect is not there to it.
Sure. But in a civil war, when a sweeping power comes in and takes a government over, and now it is the new government, it now has the sword instead of the one that it conquered.
Yep.
Do you see that there's issues?
There's no discrepancy there, because God gave that to the new government. That, for example, we came in and we took all the land from all the Native Americans. We're the new government now. And if China comes in and takes over us, then they have the power of the sword. That is how it works. But that doesn't mean it's just force. There's force and providence at work at the same time. It's not mutually exclusive.
How did they take over the old government?
Again, that's a circumstantial argument. I agree that it requires force to do things, but it doesn't. But that's not what gives it legitimacy. When you're talking about, can I be a vigilante? It's a question of legitimacy, not force. Of course, anybody can physically be a vigilante, but the question is, would you do it on a moral level? And the answer is no.
Right, but Rex, think. By force, they took the government and stepped in as the government. What gave it legitimacy? Absent the Christian worldview, what gave it legitimacy at that point?
Okay. So just to clarify, no. Just to clarify, if you're saying absent a Christian worldview, meaning this is an atheistic scenario for argument's sake?
No, it's a physical world view, like literally in that scenario.
So materialist
metaphysics. Like, what gives the legitimacy? Why do they all? If you
absent metaphysics, there is no such thing as legitimacy.
Okay, so an evil Muslim regime could rock into America and take it over.
Yep.
And you could be subjugated by them, and you will say that they have every right to do so. They have every right to do so.
Let me give you
anybody who can conquer my government is ordained by God to take my government.
Okay, no, here's the difference between a right to do so and having the right of the sword. Let me give you an example, and this is an uncomfortable example, but it makes my point. Is a Christian morally permitted to marry a non-Christian in your worldview?
Morally permitted.
Does God allow non-Christians to marry non-Christians?
I think you can, but I think you ought not.
Okay.
You should not.
I don't think that was hold on. That was my question. Well, there is Romans 7:2-3 and 1 Corinthians 7 verse 39 says you are free if your spouse dies, you are free to remarry, but only in the Lord. So it is expressly there.
Remarry, that's not.
Well, we'll get into that, but it says only in the Lord. Only in the Lord is what it says for Romans 7:2-3. So there is an express prohibition about marrying a non-Christian as a Christian.
Okay.
So now, once that marriage has occurred, is it real?
Well, there's too many factors with that. Like, is it real?
Okay, is it possible for a Christian to marry a non-Christian such that the marriage is real in the eyes of God?
Again, I'm not sure, actually.
Okay.
I don't think it would be legitimate, but
I don't know on what basis you would say that. But here's what I'm getting at. The method of getting somewhere may be illegitimate, but once achieved, the authority or the position is legitimate, even if the means of getting there was not. In the case of war, that's one example. In the case of marriage, that's another example.
I feel like it's weird that there's a stance that force allows one group to conquer another group and institute its control over a land, but force is not the mechanism, nor is it the thing.
I didn't say it wasn't the mechanism. That's a straw man. I never said it wasn't what I said was, if you have authority to execute death and deal out death, it's because it's within a government realm. Outside the government officials, you as a citizen do not have that authority, except in cases of like self-defense or like out in the street somewhere. But I don't see. But
this is separated from the point. The point is the Force allows for the thing. Like somebody who can
nobody's arguing against that.
Force can do a thing, and the same is true for government, who can crack down on things. They can decide through legal means, right, that something is illegal. The only way they actually do anything about making the choice that is illegal is through force.
Nobody ever disagreed with that. We've spent this whole time agreeing on this again and again. But the question is, when you ask me, would you do this or would you do that? My moral reasoning comes into it, especially as a citizen. So when you're I'm
not asking about what you would do. I'm saying the underpinnings, the reason that government can act is force. And the way that governments were instituted is through force.
Nobody disagreed with that. I don't know who you're talking to. Of course, I agreed with that. I'm okay. Here's what's probably going on. You probably think that I deny that force is the mechanism by which people conquer things and take power. I never denied that. I'm talking about when it comes to legitimacy, whoever has the government has the power. If you're conquered, they're the government now. Look at them. They're captain now.
Can I ask a quick question, if I may?
Sure.
So in the scenario, trying to come in or take over, well, I have two questions, but this is the first one. They come and take over. Is it morally okay for the Christians to fight against it? And if so, at what point do they recognize that China is the new government and lay down their arms?
So I would say during the time of war, when the conquest is being attempted, you can fight back. And at the point of surrender, where the governing bodies have surrendered to the Chinese, you are now subject to the Chinese. And you can't become a terrorist. You can't become an insurrectionist.
Second question. Your example with marriage, what is your definition what is your definition of marriage when you pose that question?
Yeah, so marriage is one man, one woman for life, brought together by God.
By God, but is legal by the state marriage considered that or no?
Yeah, and I'll give you an example from the Orthodox Study Bible. Actually, we're going to go to Matthew chapter 14. This has to do with John the Baptist.
On the Orthodoxy, marriage is considered a sacrament.
I know, and that's what makes this part so puzzling. Because so if you have a marriage, marriage would be between two Christians. Okay, so here's the problem with that. So if in the Orthodox Study Bible, you have one?
Of course.
Okay, so if you go to page 1295 and you look at Matthew 14, it talks about how John the Baptist goes to Herod. Herod is neither a Christian nor a Jew, and he says it is not lawful for you to have her. Meaning, okay, let me just read it verbatim. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the report about Jesus and said to his servants, "This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore these powers are at work in him." For Herod had laid hold of John and bound him and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because John had said to him, "It is not lawful for you to have her." And although he wanted to put him to death, he feared the multitude because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was celebrated, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod. Therefore, he promised with an oath to give her whatever she might ask. So she said, having been prompted by her mother, "Give me John the Baptist's head on a platter." And the king was sorry. Nevertheless, because of the oaths and because of those who sat with him, he commanded it to be given to her. So because John the Baptist rebuked him and said, "It's not lawful for you to have your brother's wife," that means that there was a legitimate marriage going on there between his brother and Herodias. And otherwise, John the Baptist, the prophet, would have nothing to criticize. And if you look at the footnote, so it's not a private interpretation issue, you can see on the first footnote of 14:1-12, it says, "St. John is further remembered for his obedience to the law in general, as a defender of marriage in particular, in condemning Herod's unlawful marriage to his brother's wife." St. John's obedience to God was one that preferred death over compromise. At Vespers on this day we sing, when your head was cut off, you revealed to us the law of God, abolishing man's disobedience to the law. So even the Orthodox Church recognizes the marriages of non-Christians, which would not be administered by either a synagogue in all likelihood, and definitely not by any Christian church before the Christ came.
Well, I don't know if that's the entailment of that.
That's exactly what it says.
No, that's not the entailment of that.
Then how are they married in the eyes of God?
He said it was unlawful.
Why was it unlawful?
Okay, so if you're saying like civic law versus sacrament, those are two different things, correct?
John the Baptist wasn't a lawyer. He's not saying it's against the law of the land. He's saying,
well, wait a minute, hold on. The Bible talks about you even going back to like Levitical law. There's all kind of things that are lawful, but not a ought statement. Yeah,
but that's marriage is a creation ordinance that has nothing to do with the civil law, and the reason we know that is because of what Jesus said in Matthew 19. When it says, if you divorce and remarry, you're committing adultery. And now even here, it says it's a defender of marriage. So either the Orthodox have it wrong and it wasn't a marriage, or you have it wrong and it was a marriage.
Well, no, and what you just read there, you said that she was a Jew, correct?
No. I said it didn't happen in a synagogue. No, I said it didn't happen in a synagogue because these are rulers of the Jews. And it didn't happen in a church because there were no churches at that point.
Was Herod correct in doing that because he was the government?
No, because the marriage supersedes government. Marriage is a creation ordinance.
But no, he put him to death, though. He was correct in that because he was the government?
No, it was a total no. That was I didn't say because you held the sword that because you have the authority to carry out capital punishment that you have the authority to do injustice too. Obviously, that was an injustice act. But the question at hand was when you're talking about marriage, the Orthodox Study Bible agrees that Philip was married to Herodias because you're not. Otherwise, John the Baptist wouldn't have said it's not lawful for you to have your brother's wife.
Give me so your claim is that because of that scripture that Orthodox views legal marriage the same as sacrament marriage? What is the claim here?
The claim here is the Orthodox Study Bible teaches that the Orthodox position is that Philip and Herodias were married.
Well, you're also just reading it, and you don't have any like church history behind it. You're just reading it. So
the Orthodox Study Bible has no church history behind it.
No, you're still reading. Are you reading it? You're interpreting this, right?
I know it. So you can't read. You can't read the Bible. You can't read anything interpreting. You can't read any textbooks. It's all behind a cloud.
I'm just asking a simple question. You're reading something. Look, we do this all the time. Like if I read a manual or something, I'm interpreting the manual, right? You're interpreting what you're reading there, correct?
I think you interpret like ciphers or things that are unclear, but you read things that are clear. And I think what I read was extremely clear.
No, if I read an instruction manual on how to cook like I don't know, a biscuit, I'm interpreting the instructions.
You are I save the word interpret for things that are vague, not things that are clear.
Well, no, I can even use the baking example, right? Let's say I read a recipe and it said it calls for flour, and my interpretation is like, oh, just general flour, and then I bake it, and then it doesn't really come out right, and then what I don't know is that the cook who was a master chef and wrote the recipe, he always bakes with double out flour or maybe self-rising flour. And his pupils, people who studied under them, would know that, but I wouldn't.
Okay, so
I'm interpreting it wrong.
So you're interpreting it wrong based on what's not in the text.
I'm interpreting it based on what I perceive to be correct.
But you, in your example, you just said flour.
Be wrong. Yeah, I wouldn't be wrong. It's flour. But anyway, my point getting back to this is that under Orthodox, marriage is considered a holy sacrament, and it's performed in the church between two Christians. They don't perform that if one person's a Christian and the other one's an atheist.
So you're saying that? Okay, so your argument.
Now they do. Now hold on. Let me finish. They do. Obviously, the church recognizes like legal marriage, but that would still not be considered in living in union with God's standards.
Okay, so then why does the Orthodox Church recognize John the Baptist as a defender of marriage because of what he said about Herod and Herodias? Because that's exactly what the footnote says, and I can read it again.
Yeah, I know that's what the footnote says.
Is the footnote wrong?
The footnote I would say is not wrong, but I would have to look into exactly your claim versus what the scripture is saying.
Well,
I don't have it off the top of my head right now.
I'll wait. You can go ahead and get your Orthodox Study Bible, and you can fact check me if I'm telling you something that's not true.
I wouldn't go. Well, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't play scripture battle and go to the Orthodox Study Bible. I would go and look at like some for like church father writing or some other church tradition on what this actually means and why it was said that way. That's what I would do.
But as you know, individual church fathers do not hold anywhere near the sway of, say, an ecumenical council, right?
Or something along those lines. Yeah, ecumenical council, sure. Like something like that. I wouldn't
So
just read the same thing you read and then say, this is my interpretation versus your interpretation.
No, because if you want to talk about interpretations, if you want to assume that there's something that needs to be interpreted or that's
so what?
unclear,
Give me the scripture again.
Okay, it is Matthew 14, and then you can go 1 through 11 if 14. You want to, or 12 if you want to. But the footnote is where it makes it especially clear when it says in the second paragraph, St. John is further remembered for his obedience to the law, capital L, in general, and his defender and the defender of marriage in condemning Herod's unlawful marriage to his brother's wife. So it's not talking about
and your claim, but okay, but with this, your claim is that Orthodoxy views this as, I guess, what is your claim? Like, what is your, like, specifically?
I would say that my claim is that the Orthodox Study Bible is probably either misrepresenting Orthodoxy or Orthodoxy is confused.
No. Like that aside, what you're saying, what is your interpretation of that scripture, and what does it mean for Orthodoxy? I'm trying to understand.
Well, my interpretation is the same as the Orthodox Study Bible, which was it was a real marriage that John the Baptist was defending.
Okay, so the claim is it's a real marriage that
between Philip and Herodias.
As okay, so all right, but
I mean, if John the Baptist is any representation of the Christian faith.
So wait a minute. What? Maybe we're just talking past each other. When I just said that, discussed about marriage and sacrament within church. My latter half of my example is the church still understands and recognizes that civil law is a marriage, but it's not living in proper, like, I guess you could say, standards with God.
So you would say that
they would not marry, but they're not going to marry a Christian and an atheist in holy matrimony. They're not going to do that.
I agree that the Orthodox position is not to have mixed faith marriages. I totally agree with that. I know that that's the case. What I'm saying is,
what did I just say contradicts what you think is going on here?
You say earlier that two non-Christians can't marry each other because of the sacrament, and that anything that's called a marriage performed outside the church is not a marriage?
Well, I would say properly, I said marriage is a sacrament, which is true.
Do you believe the government can administer sacraments, or anything outside the church can administer a sacrament?
I never claimed that.
But do you believe it, that anybody outside the church can administer a sacrament?
Not what I would consider marriage.
Okay. So so that's my point. When it comes to Matthew 14, it's called a marriage between Philip and Herodias, and that's why it's unlawful for Herod to have his brother's wife, because she's already married. Not only is it incest, but the reason is because they are family, as in Herodias and Philip are husband and wife.
All right, hold on. So I think I'm still trying to understand. So you're saying that Orthodoxy, based on what you're reading, would have to view Herod's marriage as a sacramental marriage?
I don't know what every vein of Orthodoxy would believe, or what they've written here or there. I can't claim to know if there's one coherent view here. All I know is,
I was asking what your contention is. Is that the contention?
My contention is that regardless of whatever camp you're in, there are Orthodox resources that point in my direction, and there may be Orthodox resources that point in your direction, and maybe they're held both in different documents.
I'm not sure what your direction is. Like, just
Here's my direction.
specifically.
Here's my direction. Marriage can be administered by the state, a state authorized authority to marry, or the church acting alone as a government in the case of marrying. Those are the only three avenues for legitimate marriage. There are no legitimate marriages administered. Like if there was a mosque somewhere, you then and there was no government to that mosque or whatever. I mean, that's just a ridiculous hypothetical. But let's just say that, or if it was just like plain Buddhism. There, the Buddhist temple does not have the authority, absent of government, to administer a real marriage. The only way you could do that is like when I use the island example. If you and one woman were there, you are de facto government. Therefore, even in in that freakish situation, you would be administering your own marriage with that because you would be effective government of that. But my point with Matthew 14 was that God recognized the marriage between Philip and Herodias as a real marriage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent the best men born of women to prophesy.
Okay, let me
warning.
rephrase the two parts that I said earlier. Maybe this, and see if this clicks. The church recognizes civil marriage as a real union in a basic sense, but does not see it as a full Christian marriage without the church sacramental blessing. Does that conflict with what you think is going on with that scripture?
I don't entirely know what that means in how they define those two marriages. So it'd be interesting to find out what they mean by
sacramental marriage, meaning you have the blessing of the church. It's a sacramental marriage. You do the ceremony. It's between two Christians. That's one. And then they recognize that, yes, there's this civil union in a basic sense, but it's not this other thing.
Okay. Would the Orthodox Church say that the two people who are only in a civil union but not in the sacramental marriage, that they are fornicating, or would they say that they are truly husband and wife?
So that I would have to look into. I don't know.
I'm actually really confused too, actually, because would there be a sacramental marriage prior to Christ's death and resurrection and the church being established?
Well, we would agree that people who married in the Old Testament were truly married, right?
Sure, but that wouldn't be within the Christian purview, right?
Agreed. I agree, because it would be administered by the state, and it would be recognized by God, which is my point.
Okay. So
God gave marriage also, but to be administered by the state, not just church.
Under your view, do you see civil union carrying the same weight as sacramental marriage?
Obviously, civil union is charged with some gay language. So when I say marriage, I include any marriage that was administered by the state that did not include people who are blood related, did not include people who had living valid spouses, and did not include people who were put under duress. Those would not be real marriages. But real marriages are administered either by the state, a state authorized authority, which could include other religious organizations if the state is behind it, and the church alone acting as the state. Those are the only three ways that a marriage can be, the only three authorities that can administer a marriage, which is why you can have legitimate marriages before the church is established and before synagogues are established, before Israel is established.
So from what, I mean, briefly, and this is like from that from that scripture, the Gospel of Matthew, and I think this is a grain of sand. I need to look further into this, like the actual details of this. But from what I'm seeing, the judgment was based on a moral law. She had been his brother's wife, which violated the law in Leviticus.
Yep.
Okay. So wouldn't that help, like, kind of help illustrate the important distinction there?
Which important distinction?
Between, like the types of, like what you're saying, the types of marriage.
Explain.
So the relationship between Horrid, it was recognized outwardly, socially and politically like a real union. But it was not lawful.
I think I know what you're saying.
But it's not lawful. But it's not lawful or blessed marriage in God's eyes because it violated divine commandments.
Well, also because it was not only was it incestuous, but it was adulterous because it's your brother's wife. He didn't say
so
it was
wrong.
wrong.
It was understood to be sinful and invalid in union, not a true marriage in the full sense.
Oh, absolutely. It was not a true marriage. But my point was not about Herod and Herodias. My point was about Philip and Herodias because it's still his brother's wife. He didn't say it's unlawful for you to marry because it's not a sacramental marriage or because it was just merely incest. It was because it was his brother's wife. And the wife part is still operative. Even if you take incest out of the equation, it's the wife of somebody who most likely didn't get married in a synagogue, most likely and couldn't get married in a church.
But I'm confused. Then why? Then the footnote that you read that he was a defender of marriage. John the Baptist, defender of marriage, that would be fine. That would be true because he was. So I don't understand how that contradicts what I just said.
Yeah, well, what I'm getting at is if you're going, I wanted to clarify, and it sounds like what you're saying is the church does recognize marriages that were performed outside of the Orthodox Church as true marriages. They're just not. They're not
full. They're not full
sacramental
like full
marriages.
Sacramental, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
but let me ask you a question. In these non-sacramental marriages, is it possible for a man to commit adultery?
Well, I would say yes. I mean,
okay, so it's a real marriage. Even if it's not a full marriage, it's a real marriage in your eyes.
I would say it would. Yeah, I would recognize it. Yeah, as a real marriage. Yeah.
Okay. I might disagree with the gradation.
I don't see
but yeah.
I don't
Can
see
I ask
how
a
that.
wild question?
Sure.
Can I ask you both a wild question? When did Adam marry Eve?
When God brought her to him.
Yeah, I think that goes into God being the author of marriage.
This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh.
Okay.
I shall call her woman, for she came from man.
When Jacob laid down with the women that he did, were they married upon consummation or were they married in ceremony and in?
Yeah, they'd be married in ceremony because otherwise everything would be sin then leading up to the sex that would consummate the marriage. So sex being marriage is not real. And I can get you a video on that. There's actually a great YouTube channel called Divorce Your Marriage that debunks sex being the beginning of marriage.
I think the I guess the dividing line here, if I had to sum it up between the discussion, is there's a difference between something that, and this goes into the accountant Matthew as well. There's a difference between that something that exists legally or socially and something that is valid and blessed before God.
Well, you wouldn't send a prophet before something that was just like a legal loophole. That's not, it's capital L law. That's not, he's not talking about that what you jaywalked. It wasn't like that.
Well, no, but he was a defender of marriage. So
yeah, real marriage.
I mean, right. So I don't, right. But it was still it was with Herod, it was socially acceptable based on the people that around him, right? It was socially, and he's the law, so legally acceptable.
No,
but
so
it was a moral issue.
The law he's referring to is transcendent moral law. It is not lawful. You have broken God's law. It's not you have broken the law of the land. He wouldn't have put down his life for something that was just like the law of the land, circumstantial, absent of what God's law is.
But his contention is because it violated the law in Leviticus.
The law in Leviticus is civil, but it is also moral, that you cannot commit incest. And also that you cannot commit adultery, which was what was going on between Herod and Herodias against
right.
Philip.
So it's law. Well, yeah. So it can be both, but
it is both. Yeah.
So lawful, but
Herod,
a moral issue.
But Herod was part of the Roman Empire at that point and wouldn't be subject to Judaism's laws anyway. So he wouldn't be calling him to anything. I don't know what Roman law says, and I don't think John the Baptist came as a Roman lawyer either. I think he was talking about the moral law as in thou shalt not commit adultery. It was both incest and adultery.
Right. I don't disagree with any of that.
Nope. Sounds like we agree. For the most
It
part.
sounds like we're talking. Sounds like we might have been misunderstanding each other, or at least maybe I wasn't presenting my position clearly.
Oh, we got a cool Vic raid.
Oh, thank you, Vic. Cool Vic
Cool.
raid. Thank you. Thank you, Vic. Okay, so that was quite the road to go down, gentlemen.
Yep. But you got your debate, Abe, which is what you were itching for.
Yeah, well, you know. We went from force to marriage. So
Just like I shouldn't say. Write your own jokes. All right. Well, it's getting to that time of the night. So, gentlemen, it has been.
It is for me as well.
It has been quite the three square, I guess, tonight.
Indeed.
4 score, 3 square.
Oh, indeed.
So yeah, thanks for having me. Good times.
Call out your channels. Tell people
sure.
where to go to find you.
Sure. Re-examination at Re-examination Show on YouTube. You can check my link tree in my channel description. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be doing a debate review with Eli Nix over his Mega Bloodbath Phil Talk debate. So that'll be exciting. And yeah, here's Mo Rebuttal.
Yeah, I'm Mo Rebuttal. Same handle everywhere. Discord, YouTube. You'll find me on panels like this and doing debates. I have a abortion debate coming up on the 14th, so I'll be making a post about that. So look forward to that. But yeah, you'll just see me around making arguments and having a good time. But take care. Thanks for having me up, babe. I appreciate it. This was great. Rex, thanks for the exchange. I appreciate it. And I'll see you guys later. Take care. God bless.
All right.
God bless.
Cool Vic says you and Eli Nix sound alike, so that should be interesting. I've also been told that I look like Eli. I just wanted to say that before I left. Sport Brand is complaining that now that we got the raid that we're coming to the close, but that doesn't mean you stop, Abe. Obviously, this is your house. This is the White House, and you just put in that new ballroom, so it would be rude to not let your guests dance. Have a good one.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Like I'm ruling from behind the seat somehow. That's amazing. Well, that was an interesting talk.